IVM.
Hey all, my name is Siddharth Deshmukh and I'm the traveling professor. And I teach various subjects like digital transformations, marketing, business of media, blah blah blah, etc. This podcast is my diary of sorts. This is the traveling professor's diary where I share cheer, insights, anecdotes from my journey and experiences. Here's what I have in store for you today. Talking to strangers. Malcolm Gladwell. I think he has got a gift, yeah. Malcolm Gladwell does. You don't remember him? He's the guy who wrote about how we tend to make very quick decisions in blink, about the 10,000 hour rule in Outliers, and about how an idea becomes very viral in The Tipping Point. I just finished reading his latest book, Talking to Strangers. And once again, I think he really manages to make you think of everything once again. You think you've understood something, but then he makes you think about it again. He gets you to question everything about your assumptions around that subject. And if you're open enough, you tend to kind of question those assumptions. I know he kind of has his detractors. Not all of his books are as good as each other. Okay. I personally did not like, that David versus Goliath thing, whatever that was. But personally, anybody who can make a non-fiction book read like Harry Potter has to be very special. Yeah. In fact, if anyone is averse to reading non-fiction, I'll recommend his name and say, okay, start with a good book from this guy's work. What this guy does is really well. Okay. He observes people and describes them in an intimate, personal way, as if you can see those people. And then he draws insights from them. I'm not his agent again, by the way. I do think, again, this book, Talking to Strangers, has its minor flaws. It left me, for example, a little confused in the end as to, exactly what are you trying to say? But these are just minor quibbles. I think the guy is gifted. This particular book, Talking to Strangers, it's a nice read. It talks about what we should know about the people we don't know. My key takeaways from this book are 3. First, let's not judge strangers to be like us, think like us in similar situations, etc. Behave similarly to us in a default option. This is especially useful when traveling. Your co-passengers actually come from different worlds that maybe you hardly ever know. Yeah. So don't pretend familiarity. Perhaps, step outside your own skin, look a little deeper maybe. This seems obvious, but we rarely do this. We kind of co-opt people into our own world, but don't really observe them. Next takeaway, the second one, is that people don't really show their true emotions. And we tend to read what's on their faces, but sometimes miss the actual picture. The world is not as transparent as we think it is. And we should be watching out for the mismatch between what is said and what is unsaid. I find this specifically useful when I'm teaching, and I encourage my students, to say what they feel like, but I'm also looking at body language. This is one of the reasons why, I'm telling people, hey, look, you want to yawn, please yawn. Okay. Nothing worse than a stifled yawn. And that comes from the learning that, it's better to express what you're saying rather than not. The third takeaway from this book is probably the most insightful, the most amazing, and that's why I kept it for the last. Let me bring this insight to you with an example. Did you know that suicides are actually connected with the place or the method of suicide? That actually means that less people will commit suicide if their favorite bridge that they jump off has more enforcement. Or if the most popular way of committing suicide is by shooting yourself with a gun, the number of suicides will go down if handguns are banned. Now, I know what the argument is. A person wanting to commit suicide will find another method, right? That's what you'll say. But Gladwell actually shows us data in this book that highlights something called coupling. That people only behave in a certain way in a certain circumstance and will not behave in that way if the context and circumstance changes. Now, I know what you're saying. And this is the main argument against Malcolm Gladwell too. That he cherry picks data. That means he just picks up data that suits him and paints a story around it that he wants to. And he's a great, wonderful storyteller. There is some merit in it, but let me also ask you this. Don't you find yourself behaving differently when you go back to your hometown, right? And visit a familiar place? Doesn't your language change when you meet an old pal? Well, that is coupling for you. I personally think there is some merit in this line of thinking. Let's keep our minds open and try to understand, right? Come to think of it, the more I'm speaking to you about this book, the more clarity I'm getting, lesser confusion. And I'm glad I'm doing so. Do yourself a favor. Read any of his books that I've mentioned, judge for yourself. As I said, I'm no agent of his, and he has his flaws, but some of his books and some parts of his books are incredibly good. Well, thank you for listening to me, and do spread the word that the Traveling Professor is in town, at least on his podcast, The Traveling Professor's Diary. If you like this podcast, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts, by the way, on the IVM network. You can listen to us on the IVM podcast app or ivmpodcast.com too. You can also follow us on social media at IVM Podcasts on Twitter and Instagram. And of course, if you want to reach out to me, I am on Instagram and LinkedIn, as what else? The Traveling Professor. See you soon.
I hope you enjoyed that show. We'd like to thank our sponsors this week, Intel, Storytel, and Cambly. And let me tell you a couple of things that you should check out this week. On Storytellers and Storysellers, Vineet is joined by actor Amol Parashar and content strategist at TVF, Akansh Kaur. They talk about the risks and rewards they encountered after quitting their traditional jobs for digital media entertainment. On Advertising is Dead, Varun is joined by business head of Gully Gang Entertainment, Chaitanya Kataria. They discuss the rise of new age music. On Litnama, Lakshmi is in conversation with poet Jasmine Khurana. They discuss the trend of slam poetry. On Football Shutball, Gaurav, Karthik and Siva talk about Man City's visit to the Emirates Stadium. On Simplified, Chuck and Shriketh simplify the impeachment process in the US and discuss the chances of Trump getting impeached. On Geek Fruit, Jishnu is joined by Siddharth Mehta and they do a roundup of the greatest hits and myths of 2019. Thanks and keep listening.
How many times have you motivated yourself to improve your sleep or lose weight or be more productive? How many times have you failed? Hi, my name is Ashton Doctor. Tune into my show, The Habit Coach Podcast, where we focus on creating small, tiny habits to improve your life instead of those big, impossible tasks. So make listening to me a habit every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday on the IVM Podcast app or ivmpodcast.com or on your favorite podcasting app.